Does your organization need more nurses? Struggling to connect with RNs where they spend time? Budgets are tight, there's a scarcity of applicants, and using travellers can cost up to an additional $150,000 per year. It's time for a superior solution. It's time to work with the experts. Like us. Since 2019, healthcare providers throughout the US and Canada have successfully engaged and recruited thousands of candidates using nurse recruitment experts' three step advertising, screening, and consultative process. We help healthcare providers reach further with their advertising, discover hidden gems, and mobilize the power of their employer brand in nurse recruitment. With results based pricing and no long term commitments, we are the most cost effective and low risk partner for your nurse recruitment needs. So why not take your nurse recruitment to the experts? Visit nurserecruitmentx.com.
Hey everyone, so we've spent about $1 million on nurse job advertising over a few campaigns over the last few years, and today I wanted to save you a bit of money and share some of our insights after that hefty spend. Because if you're just in one hospital or a chain of hospitals, you're going to struggle to get visibility on how much that can generate for you. Even more so if you're just doing one function in the HR team. So, identified a few tracts and a few useful learnings that you can use to improve your own nurse job advertising. So, the first one is when it comes to making a nurse job ad, there are three key things you must consider. The first one, and the most important one, is what is your offer? Now, that means what are you bringing to nurses in the candidate market that you're trying to attract them from? Your offer is the core of your being. It's what makes you stand out from competitors. Often you hear this called employer value proposition. What value do you bring to a nurse? Because it's not enough anymore to say we're hiring and get applications. It's a tight labor market, and you need to define what's your purpose and why should nurses care. So often offers cannot be changed. It's really core facts like the pay, benefits, the location, the history of the organization, but they can be interpreted and stories can be told that make them light up. And think about politicians. They have the facts and then they have manners of communicating those facts. Think back to Ronald Reagan. He would often make up stories. The guy who had the government come to his door, and it didn't actually happen, but he said it was a parable, and it's communicating a deeper meaning. Now, I'm not saying being dishonest, but take the core truth of what you have, and then find a way to interpret that, convince people that this is a story worth listening to. And once you've done that, you want to consider who is the audience for your offer. Now, if you're looking for graduates, you're probably going to be wanting to communicate with nursing skills, job boards, social media like TikTok. If it's more experienced executive leadership positions, then LinkedIn is going to be a better place for that. Really, the audience need to be spoken to, and you need to consider where they are before creating your campaign. So, audiences are spending time on their phones, their laptops, the main way you're reaching them. And think about where would my ideal candidate be spending their leisure time and their job seeking time. That's going to affect what you say in your nurse job advertisements and also how you communicate with candidates in the images, which is my last point. The visuals around it, the feeling that they get whenever they view your campaign. And that's not just the picture that might be attached, that's everything that the eyes can see. So whenever someone goes onto your career site, if they just see a job board, It's not going to excite them. It's not going to get them bought into the offer and make them want to engage. You have to have images of the staff. You have to have stories, colors. It has to be on brand. Has to be brought to life. And people want to see similar nurses. They want to see people that look like them are doing things they're doing in their position. So think about how can you really use imagery in order to have a successful ad campaign. So know what your offer is, define it, get very clear on it. Think about the audience. Who are we going to be engaging with? And then when it comes to the ad, the images need to be on point and relate back to those two things. And the text as well. It has to look like advertisement. You're competing for attention against other advertisements. Don't just say, here's the job description, apply now. Not going to work in the same way as someone that's telling a story through their advertisement. We did a webinar on this. Just look up creating nurse job ads and you'll see it, or you can find it in our podcast as well. Next, you want to actually create a strategy, standard operating procedures, and have someone dedicated to doing the nurse job advertising. Too often it's ad hoc and it's given to someone who has a million other responsibilities and gets left by the wayside because it's something that is hard. It needs time devoted to it. And if you're unsuccessful at it, then unsuccessful is the norm, really, in attracting nurses these days. It's seen as something that is acceptable to be unsuccessful at often. That's just not the case. This is a very important topic. In order to attract talent, you need to be out there advertising and create a strategy around it. So how do you do that? Well, you want to define what your goals are. What do you want the end result to be? And then you want to write down who's attaching to each outcome. How much time are they going to devote to it? And then how are you going to track the success of it? Most people in HR are not experienced in advertising. So you'll have to include how are we going to train this person, or how are we going to bring in some help in order to make this success. It could be strategy is we're going to outsource all of this, which is fair enough, but there has to be some sort of strategy there associated with what the goals are, because if not, when the quarter comes around and the budgets are decided, there's a risk that the CFO could cut your recruitment advertising budget. You'll have less money to spend on advertising jobs nurse because there hasn't been a clear approach to how much you're going to spend and how much you're going to get out of it. So create a strategy, write down the standing operating procedures, specialize resources, who's going to be on this task. Now, in our spend, we put a lot of that money on social media. So that was our main thrust, really. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok were our home because we're attracting passive candidates. We also had an amount segmented off to go to job boards like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Talent.com. And often these are tricky relationships to manage because we found that there's been some great account representatives who really helped us and being able to mobilize their teammates and resources towards our success. And then there's some that are more hands off. And then there's ones that just want to push you to spend more money. And it's hard to know what you're getting, really. And often we find it tricky to navigate, especially if our account gets banned or blocked out of the blue and we don't have a lot of recourse or response in order to fix it. So, not ranting here, it's what do you do about that? How can you manage it? We find it useful if you write down on a Word doc, here is what we expect from this relationship, and here's what we're hoping to get out of it. Here's how we're going to track our results. And then send that to them and get them to contribute to it. Get them to say, well, here's what they expect, here's what they hope for. Because that way you're setting up the prospect that you're going to want to grow and expand your spend, and that will get them excited. But on these platforms, it's crucial that you have a rep. because you get banned at any time, and you want someone on the inside who's going to help you improve. Be aware, their job is to get you to keep using the platform and keep spending money on the platform. So if things aren't working, they say you need to spend more money or you need to try this extra feature. There are other options out there. You have a right to draw a line and say increasing isn't seeing increase in the results for our nurse job advertising, and you can pull it back. You're not tied in to listening to every single piece of advice. You have your own decision making abilities, and you know what's going on in your organization better than anyone else. So don't feel pressured to just keep spending money whenever there's a myriad of other platforms out there. That's something that we find useful in our spend. I think that's about it for that point. And if you want any advice around that, come to me. Really, you do have to use the channels that nurses are going to. If you can do your own advertising independently, we've seen in recent months, whenever we've devoted a lot more time and attention to search engine optimization, it feels good. I mean, we feel more at peace with it because we're able to grow something that, whilst it's under the umbrella of Google, we don't have to pay $30 to get one candidate. We invest the time and money in the process for growing our own brand and recognition. So consider how can you use search engine optimization too. If you're looking for information on that, just send me a message on LinkedIn. Adam Chambers, be happy to help. Next, number 4 is engaging candidates. So we discovered a little bit in their spend that this was a one-time payday, really. We would spend, say, $100, get 3 candidates, and we're able to submit 1 for interview. And then that's it. That's the end of that $100. If someone gets hired, then yeah, it's more. But more often than not, they're not going to get hired, so that's the end of it. Think about how many nurses are in your database, and think about the average cost per candidate acquisition per nurse. And that just doesn't include spend on job boards, but also what the team have earned and what's been pumped in the marketing. And whenever you see that number, you're going to realize that you're sitting on a gold mine, and it's time to start taking that gold mine. So whenever we sat up and realized, oh, we're spending this money, but after the interview event is over, we really got on to devising better ways to engage and work with our database. And that's something that we're actually developing at the moment. Tool, software that will provide real inherent value to nurses. What you can do is an email newsletter that educates them on the market that you're in. So don't just give career tips, but say, here's what's going on in San Antonio nursing market. Say a little bit more about what's going on with your organization or upcoming interview days, even provide them training so they can get to where they need to be in order to be qualified to apply. And there's so many things that you can use to re-engage and keep the database alive that need to be done. Otherwise, yeah, that's an untapped gold mine right there. So my last point is you want to diversify categories over channel. So that means a channel is, say, Indeed or LinkedIn or Facebook. And I think the natural response is to go out and say, we need to be everywhere that candidates are, and we need to be doing everything in order to be seen by them there. And in doing so, a lot of organizations, and we did this at points, spread yourself a little bit too thin, and you start spending money on areas that aren't particularly efficient. Let's get 5 channels, let's get 10 channels. We need to be trying everything because we need to be doing everything in this market. Often it's better to recognize what works for you in your given market in respect to what your offer is, what your freedom around what you can say and marketing is, and then diversify across different categories for that. So for example, we found as an agency, our unique selling point, our flexibility came in through the ability to communicate on behalf of our clients, but not as our clients. And that meant that we could be a bit more edgy, a bit more different, eye catching with the content that we put out on social media in particular than a client who would need to go through a lot of approvals in order to do it. So our channel really for that was Facebook. We didn't say let's do this on Facebook, Tumblr, Reddit, everywhere. We said, okay, we're getting great results with Facebook. How can we spread across this category instead of going out in different channels and trying to be edgy on Indeed, for example, as well? So we were able to create multiple ad campaigns for home care agency that each had its own different messaging, different audience, different text, different mode of application. And doing so, we realized this is what works for us. This is a great channel. We're going to spread across this channel in order to dominate it. With another one, it was actually Indeed. So great results from Indeed. Lots of candidates over 2 jobs. Let's make 20 jobs and expand where we've already staked our flag and are getting traction. So don't try and boil the ocean, as they say. Look at what's out there. Try different things, but ultimately go back to what your offer is and consider what makes us different and what's the best way for us to break through and get in front of people on a particular channel. I think Facebook or TikTok are great ones if you're more nimble and mobile and have a less stringent brand brand imaging policy or brand approvals, because a lot of people are a bit fuddy-duddy about that. They cannot be unique and interesting even in what they say, so they fall behind those platforms. So I think in terms of categories, like being out there on social media, having user-generated content from nurses who are videoing themselves is a great method of advertising that not a lot of people are doing. In summary, we spent that money and we learned that it all starts with the offer, as I've already mentioned. And you need to communicate it and you need to have a strategy around communicating it and then spreading it out on multiple platforms. Think about what's the best platform and then land and expand on that instead of trying 10 different ones for a year. Try 10 different ones for a couple of months and then do different categories within those platforms. And really, if you're working on job boards, consider you don't have to spend all your money if the rep says so. While it might seem that the bigger ones are a monopoly, there are different ways that you can put money into it, and we find search engine optimization is a good niche one that not a lot of people are doing. Just as an example. So that's it. Hope you find it useful. For the next 1 million, will definitely be better and it'll go further. If you want more nurse recruitment secrets, insights, follow our podcast, Nurse Recruitment Secret, or connect with me on LinkedIn, Adam Chambers, and ask me anything you want, and I'll give you my opinion and thoughts on it. So thanks for watching or listening, and have a great day.